Welcome to this video. We will talk about the movie Transported 3. We will begin by exploring the movie storyline, summarizing its plot and discuss the cast and characters. Then we will take a closer look at the film production details and box office performance. Finally, we will share review and audience reaction to give you a well-rounded perspective. Let's get started. Transported 3. Lead Transported 3 is a 2008 English language French action thriller film directed by Orville McDonald. It is the sequel to 2002, The Transporter, and 2005 Transported 2. The film was released on 26 November 2008. A ship arrives carrying toxic chemicals that have killed two of its crew members. Frank Martin and the Tarraconi are finished in mercenaries. When Tarraconi receive a call about a black Audi A80 that speeds past French customs and the evidence the police in a car chases, while Tarraconi returns to headquarters to give Frank a bill. In the ODCC Ukraine, the environmental agency minister receives a theater from the aircraft operative Jones Johnson. A ship arrives carrying toxic chemicals that have killed two of its crew members. Frank Martin and the Tarraconi are finished. Is marshals when the Tarraconi receive a call about a black Audi A8 that speeds fast, French customs and the evidence the police in a car chases. Where Tarraconi returns to the headquarters to give Frank a bill. In the Odysseus, Ukraine, the environmental agency minister receive a theater from the European operator Johnson to respond business negotiations. At night, the audio crashes into Frank's home with a wounded transporter Welcome Manuel, whom Frank had referred when he declined a previous job. As paramedic take away Malicon, Frank discovers in the basket a woman who warns him not to take her from the car. She shows him the metal bracelet she and the Malicon have been wearing. Frank rushes outside, but the ambulance explodes. He is knocked out by a henchman, outraged by Jason at the gunpoint and wearing the explosive bracelet. Frank must take a package and the woman, Valentina to bed paste. Tamlino co negatives to postpone signed European agreement that would allow the ships with the chemical into his country. While Tarraconi researches into Johnson's motivations, Frank goes off a course, visiting a grave to try a deal with the bracelet. But as he fends off the Jason man, the machine's friend Otto cannot disarm the device on the cat. At bed base, Jason tells Frank that he fired and one of Jason's men steals the OT, leaving Frank to chase him down. After Frank and Jason agree to call it even, Jason sends him to bullshit. But Frank and the Valentines are chased by black Mercedes-Benz E-Class, are driven by the Tamlicon agents. After opening the package in the trunk, Frank realizes Valentine is the real package. She seduces Frank by holding his car. Frank realizes Valentine is the real package. She seduces Frank by holding his car keys. Valentine, who is received to be the Tomlikono daughter, explained that she was drugged in Iblizon was the transport by the Malcolm. Jason ridicules him to the odds when he and his men surrounded them on a bridge. All thought Valentina is delivered to Johnson and her bracelet removed. Johnson men shoot at Frank's car. Frank drivers off the bridge into the lake and barely survive aboard the train. Johnson lets Tamlico talk to Valentines and give him 50 minutes to sign. After Tarraconi and the Ukraine police retire the OT, Frank continues his chases and jumps the car on top of the train. He takes out Jason, man, but cannot touch Jason because he is too far from his car. After Jason separates the train cabins, Frank jumps his car into the cabs and beats Jason, trapping him. He takes out Jason's man but cannot touch Johnson's because he is too far from his car. After Jensen separates the train cabins, Frank jumps his car into the cabs and beats Jason, starting him with the bracelet and sending his car into receive upon hearing from the Tycoon that Valentina is safe. Tamlico treats up to the European contracts before heading for his business conference. The cargo ships are raised by police and sent away from Ukraine shores. Frank or the Tarquini then return to finish it the Marcells, but Valentine suggests they eat out inside. Jason Statham as the Frank Martin. Your special delivery, some may be forced to leave the road. Transporter 3 is a perfectly actable, brilliant action thriller, inspiring us to give a lot of thought to Copland's sequence. We would have been better off the stacking on as eye candy. Consider this the indications dilemma faced by the transporter. He cannot remove a bracelet that is the link to a imaginary bomb in his Audi A8 if he goes more than 75 feet from the car. The explanation kills him. He and the car and the girls are trapped on a bridge by men with the machine guns. He releases the girl. The men are shooting at him. Now can he escape? Remember, this is the transporter. He completes 100% of his. Remember, this is the transporter. He completes 100% of his delivers. If told you his FedEx tracking number, he would have to kill you because we know it's impossible to kill an action hero with the machine gun fire. He is in no real danger, but as men advance on him from both ends of the bridge, he has to do something to keep up appearance. He cannot just wait for them to fire on him point blank. For that matter, the bad guys know their machine guns are important because they have both ends of the bridge blocked and have not been hit by each other bullets. But what does the transporter do? Stays hard to the left, drives through the. For the matter, the bad guys know their machine guns are important because they have both ends of the bridge blocked and they have not been hit by each other bullets. But what does the transporter do? Stays hard to left, drives through the bridge, rail and the planks into the lake, rail and the planks into the lake. Now we are talking real trouble. If he swims for the shore, the bomb will kill him. The only answer is to take the car to the shore with him, willing holding his breath. He impressive a way to get air underwater. It's clear, but I would not advise you to try it while underwater. Anyway, the plot involves bad guy who want to bring either cannot ship of toxic point into a Ukraine harbor. He impressive a way to get air underwater. It's clear, but I would not advise you to try it while underwater. Anyway, the plot involves bad guy who want to bring either contained ship of the toxic points into a Ukraine harbor. Odis has a beautiful harbor, some nice steps leading down to the water, but the Ukraine minister does not want to give his permission. The bad guys kidnap the girl, and the transporter job is to transport her for the bad guys. All thought he brings to care for her. Rudakova is a Bonian hunt when it comes to personality. She is Girls Point, look out the window and yet falls in love with the transporter. Some perceptions will no doubt criticize her acting. I say the hell with her acting, look at those freckles. I cannot never get enough of the freckles in the movie. They are usually limited to a sprinkling on a moved nose. When you see a beautiful woman with the freckles, as for example the adorable actress Julina Natalya who rejects, the director of the Transporter 3. Ovlinar Magneto is named after the bomb at the Hiroshima, which was dropped in his birthday. The transporter's real name is the anticlimactic Frank Martin. Anyway, all thought Magneton CGI fight scenes. The director of the Transporter 3, Oliver McTone, is named after the bomb at the Hiroshima, which was dropped on his birthday. The transporter's real name is the anticlimactic Frank Martin. Anyway, all thought McTone's CGI fight scenes are as chopped up, incredible as the current Norma. He mostly avoids the quasi cam and uses a stable camera while only the action movie. How about that? He also succeeds in clearly every highway in every chase scene, so the road is held only by the chassis and the chassis. Only by the chassis and the chassis, except when two monster trucks are the required to speed this way, in which cases all thought there has been no traffic sign the border. They must pass each other and the loudly to there. He also succeeds in the clarify every highway in every chassis scene, so the road is held only by the chassis and the chassis except when two monster trucks are required to speed this way, in which cases all thought there has been no traffic signs the border, but must patch each other and the loudly toot their calisons oh god, as if you don't see them. This movie is not boring. Jason Statham is a splendid action hero. Steely eye muscular, Tiki Tren are close-lipped, know it all with their day's trouble. He could do the snowmobile rescue with the two broken arms. The bad guy asks the stable, reassemble the photography is expert, and when you see the transporter thinking his way out of the problem on the bottom of the lake, you are amazed. That latter this movie is not boring. Jason Statham is a splendid action hero. Steel eye muscular, Terrimer are the close-lipped knob. It all with their day stable. He could do the snowmobile race with two broken arms. The bad guys are the suitable responsibility the photography is expert and that you see the transporter thinking his way out of the problem on the bottom of the lake. You are amazed. That later he returns the engine and uses it to drive on the top of a spending train and then calculates a way to the used train speed to save. But see for yourself that A8, what a car. Solar panels to run the heat and the AC. Transporter 3. The We Did Not Like It review. Transporter 3 peaks at abject in scalding this gigi high in plumb so many depths that it would take me a month, a scroll of human flesh and a pint of my own blood just to lead them. Instead, let me quickly sketch out the principal travels before shifting my energy to one the real cinema against skill out. Let's begin with the story. Frank Martin, played by Jason Statham, wakes up to find himself with a bracelet bomb strapped to his wrist that will be explored if he wants to fall from his car. He is then picked a picnic long by bad guys and sent off so effort, a package to budget, so forth. So transferred, unfortunately, this decision's life or liderations is delivered by a script so terrifying bad that I am afraid to quote any of the lines for fear of being sued for emotional damage. It's a script so applying that only the very roast actor could do it justice. And aside from a few rebel by God they success. Let's begin with the story. Frank Martin, played by Jason Statham, wakes up to find himself with a bracelet bomb strapped to his face that will explode if wanted to fall from his car. He then packed a picnic lunch by the bad guys and sent off to escort a package to Bassett. So transporter, unfortunately, this decision slice of the elevations is delivered by a script so terrifying had that I am afraid to quote any of them lines for fear of being successed of emotional damage. It's a script so applying that only the very roast actor could do it justice, and aside from a few rebels, by God the success dialogues is churned over and displayed on the screen at a rate of knot, and by the time the film ends, you really will wonder if every conversation starts with an exclamation. However, judging an action film on its dialogue is like judging Halliman for his the flame first scene. So let's address the flight, or to be the correct, the fight. There are three big fights peppered throughout the movie, but if you look carefully, you will notice they are actually the same one in the different locations. In each, our hero is surrounded by a pose of bad guys, requiring him to shun down to his neck rose to in order to oval slap the beach out of them with his own clothes. In a store of the genius, the director has decided the best way to hide this fact is so edit the fights down into an incomprehensible mess of flashing lights and the sound effects, which only success is making you feel as if you have a blind fit each time one start. I can only put this down to the movie receiving the same budget from the studio as an English innovator would get, pending a new type of comb to the bank. Evidence of this cost cutting is effect throughout from the audio that can't be sketched. Sure that I can only put this down to the movie receiving the massive budget from the studio as an English innovator would get, peddling a new type of comb to the bank. Evidence of this cost cutting is in effect thought out. From the Audi can't be scared short. The enter of the buffon even after driving into a train. Right throw out to the girl. Oh God, the girl, the love inside. If love was fair, she did be charged with the cinema against humanity. This is a girl so bad her character start off sound like Yoda and ends up Borat. In bringing these diverse acting style her characters move it through a range of emotions that can best be sums up as silky money salute and the down. Indeed, at one point it got to so bad I have considered donating the Flash. I can only put this down to the movie receiving the same budget from the studio as an English innovative word, get pending a new type of comb to the bank. Evidence of this cost cutting, in effect throughout, from the Audi that can't be sketched, sure didn't of the buffon even after driving into a train. Right through to the girl, oh God, the girl, the love insert. If life was fair, she did not be changed with the crime against humanity. This is the girl so bad. This is the girl so bad. Her character start off the sounding like Yoda and ends as a Borat. In writing these diverse acting style, her characters move it through a range of emotion that can best be smoothed up as silky money. Indeed, at point it got so bad, I would seriously have considered donating the flesh from my bones if somebody had offered to choke her with it. Yet somehow we are meant to buy into as a love insert. She is so irritating that when she and Frank finally made their movie, the audience actually grant. Yet if you have skipped ahead you will have noticed I have offered transported 3 a principle. Yet if you have skipped ahead you will have noticed I have aware transported 3 a princely 2 starts. If you have not skipped to the end, do so now. We will wait to star for the 2 reasons. The first is the Statham. That's right, we are using the Devitations article because he now owns this genre body and soul. God only know how he managed to interpret the enrolled. Rock correction through we have suggests a rocket launcher and a kick to the crotch on his evidence. But somehow Statham has unspared the 18 action movie. Admittedly, he may have the acting range of a Jamie Dot out, but that's irrelevant. He has the cool delivery and the self-confidence swagger of an actor comfortable and is immensely watchable throughout. The second is for Francois Berland who plays the Terracon, the French cop from the first 2 films, who Frankie only friends. The two have a genuine chemistry that brings a couple of nice lines and a dazzling exchange on why Russians are so dull, which belong in much better film than this. In fact, it would have fitted into either of the first 2 quite comfortably, because while they were them, at least they were enjoyable. Transporter is not. Transporter 3 is not. Movie and Film Review. Movie review of Transporter 3 2008. In maybe the 3rd installment of a series, but Transporter 3 could easily have been entered Genesis action movie. Generic action movie coming from Louis Besson, French action production house. This third Transporter outing is only deciding to place undiscrambling action fans or unfussy viewers. The film contains a few nice car chases, a few scenes of the fictitious, a handful on fitty It may be the third installment of a series, but Transporter 3 could easily have been entered generic action movie. Coming from Luc Besson French action production house, this third Transporter outing is only deciding to place under criming action fans or unfussy viewers. The film contained a few nice car chases, a few scenes of the feet cuffs, a handful of the nifty stunts, or some explosive, but the material is the painfully generic, and the film does not do anything well enough to genuinely stand out among hundreds of other action titles. The fact that it has a glaring problem with the scripting and pace, and that it is not as thrilling as it should have been, only words matter, ensuring that Transporter 3 will not be remembered in a few years, or indeed a couple of hours after you watch it. Effectively retired from the transporter business, Frank Martin is the approach by a bunch of the genetic shady band guys to take care of the delivery job, but he promptly refused to pack forcefully pressures. He recommended someone else for the job, but his replacement is promptly killed, forcing Frank back into pay. Jensen refused to take no for answer this time to make sure Frank Bell it fits him with the explosive bracelet ring to denote if gets more rush to denote if gets more than 75 feet away. 75 feet away from his car in Frank turns are a couple of hours after you watch it. Effectively retired from the transporter business, Frank Martin is approached by a bunch of the genetic shady bad guys to take care of the delivery job, but he promptly refused to pack forcefully fractions. He recommended someone else for the job, but his replacement is the promptly killed, forcing Frank back into pay. Jason refused to take no for an answer this time. To make sure plays Bell, he feeds him with an explosive bracelet ring to denote if he gets more than 75 feet away from his car. In Frank's truck car a couple of bags he is supposed to deliver. With his passenger seat is the while his passenger seats is the occupied by Ukrainian girl Valentina, who also carries an the explosive bracelet and who plays in the same is unknown. The first two Transporter films are not action masterpieces, but they remain immensely watchable thanks to high energy level, stylish action, excellent fight scene, and non-serious tone. However, the Transporter outing is a glamour affair, resulting in an often joyless action machine without the euphoric spark that the made its producers so fan. Because Transporter 2 was so reported over the top, the filmmakers attempt to bring things back down to earth by focusing more on characters' interactions or tear than thrillers over the top action beats problem is. The first two Transporter films are not action masterpieces, but they remain immensely watchable thanks to high energy level, stylish action, excellent fight scenes, and a non-serious tone. However, this Transporter outing is a gloomier affair, resulting in an often joyless action machine without the epic spark that made it the producers so fun. Because Transporter 2 was so precisely over the top, he filmmaker attempt to bring thing back down to the earth by forcing more on the characters' interactions or dear than the delirious over the top action bears. Problem is try as he might. Olivier Megan too is simply not an overload good director, and the passing is at the time so slunks. While as Louis Payson and the Robert Mark Camin also made the triple mistake of the introduce a romantic subplot into the fray, with the Frank's sensitive side being exposed to the Valentines as they exchange into dialogues. Clearly, the aim was to move the series forward by exploring further fact of the Frank characters, while it possible to appreciate what the filmmakers aspire to do, it was just not done well enough. Transported 3 story is heavily charred by two exploited I guess. The problem though the story does not make much current sense because of make much current scenes because of Vigo villains motivation and the clumsy executions. Not to mention as with modern action all over the stunts. Transporter 3 story is heavily clad, but that to be exchanged, I guess. The problem though is that the story does not make much urine scenes, because of which villain motives and the clumps exhibitions, not to mention as with the most modern actions all over the stunts fight, and the action scenes are marred by the confusing camera replacements and the repair file editing, making certain sequences impossible to enjoy. The fights were choreographed by Corey Yon, so they often impress, but only if you can fight out what the hell is happening. Why hire such a talent like the Yon? Is all of his geography will be cut to share in the editing room. The film suffered because of its PG-13 rating too, as it was choppily edited to avoid the need for the valiant shot of the bullet hits. Transporter 3 is for the most part dumb as well. Villains are stupid and cannot shoot straight, and the Frank at one stage balanced his car on two side wheels to go between two trucks. If therefore buffering that they one tone is so dumb, why not cut looses and just reveal in fun readiness? To be fair, there is some fun to be had from time, and the Iceland action scenes do shine. A highlight see Frank chasing a car on the foot and on a bicycle. Returning to the role of the Frank Martin, Statham is essentially the same characters here that he plays in all of his action movie. However, Statham is so successfully not because. Returning to the role of the Frank Martin, Jason Statham is essentially the same character here that the play in all of the action movie. However, Statham is so successful not because of range but because of his innocent charisma and the screen presence, both qualities of which are the omnipresent in his performance here. Additionally, Statham actually inhabits the role and as a result does not ever sound converted or phony, which is highly laudable. Statham love insert this time around was played by Natalya Redway OK, a actress with no acting experience who was required by Lucy Basin on a whim. Her lack of acting skill is the obvious, but she is serviceable enough for this type of action movie. Interestingly, while Rudakova is the admittedly somewhat sexy, she is not the typically super hot Megan Fox type that one would expect to see in a movie like this. Meanwhile, Robert Knepper played the villain Jason. He completely genetic action movie villain, though, and he lacked the chilling edge of his work on TV Person Break. At the end of the day, Transporter 3 is neither good nor bad. It's heavily flawed and the completely forgettable, but it's the nonetheless serviceable, enjoyable to an extent, thanks to a few action beats and even a decent smarting tough in check humor. Smarting tough in check humor. Action film like this are akin to a hamburger from the McDonald's. At the end of the day, Transporter 3 is the neither good for not bad. It's heavily flawed out and the completely forgettable, but is the nonetheless serviceable and enjoyable to an extent, thanks to a few nice action beats and even a decent smarting of the tough in check humor. Action film like these are akin to a hamburger from the McDonald's, quick, easy, cheap and the really available, but nothing overly skillfully, and some are better made than other. Movie and film review. Movie review of Transporter 3, 2008. It may be the third installment of a series, but Transporter 3 could easily have been entitled generic action movie. Coming from Lucy Besson French Action Productions, coming from LUC Besson French Action Production House, this third Transporter outing is only designed to please disarming action fans or unfussy viewers. The film contains a few nice car chases, a few scenes of fisticuffs, a handful of nifty. It may be the third installment of a series, but Transporter 3 could easily have been entire generic action movie. Coming from Lucy Besson French Action Production House, this third Transporter outing is only destined to please and discriminating action fans or unfussy viewers, The film contains a few nice car chases, a few scenes of fisticuffs, a handful of nifty stunts, and some explosive, but the material is the painfully generic, and the film does not do anything well enough to genuinely stand out among hundreds of other action titles. The fact that it has glaring problem with the scripting and the pace, and that it's not as a thriller as it should have been, only one knows matter, ensuring that the Transporter 3 will not be remembered in a few years or indeed couple of hours after you watch it. Effectively retried from the Transporter 3 business, Frank Martin is the approach by a bunch of the generic shady band guys to take care of the delivered job, but she promptly refused deposit forcefully pressures. He recommends someone else for the job, but his replacement is promptly killed, forcing Frank back into pay. Johnson refused to take no for answer this time. To make sure Frank Ball, he feeds him with an explosive bracelet regard to donated if he gets more than 75 feet away. In Frank's trunk are a couple of hours after you watch it. Effectively retried from the transporter business, Frank Martin is approached by a bunch of generic study bad guys to take care of delivered job, but he promptly refuses deposit forceful pressures. He recommends someone else for the job, but his replacement is promptly killed, forcing Frank back into pay. Jason refused to take no for an answer this time. To make sure Frank plays ball, he fit him with an explosive bracelet regard to denote if he gets more than 75 feet away from his car. In Frank's trunk are a couple of bags he is supposed to deliver, while his passenger seat is occupied by Ukrainian girl Valentina, who also carries an the explosive bracelet and whose place in the shame is unknown. The first two Transporter films are not action masterpieces, but they remain immensely watchable thanks to high energy level, stylish action, excellent fight scenes, and non-serious tone. However, this Transporter outing is a glamorous affair, resulting is an often joyless action machine without the European spark that made its producer so fun. Because Transporter 2 was so pursued because Transporter 2 was so preposed over the top, the filmmakers attempt to bring things back down to earth by focusing more on characters' interactions or dear than. The first two Transporter films are not action masterpieces, but they remain immensely watchable thanks to high energy level, stylish action, excellent fight, scene, and a non-serious tone. However, this Transporter outing is a glamorous affair, resulting in an often joyless action machine without the European spark that made it the predecessor so fun. Because Transporter 2 was so preposterously over the top, the filmmakers attempt to bring things back down to earth by focusing more on characters' interactions or dear than delirious over the top action beats. Problem is, try as he might, Oliver Macton is simply not an overload good director, and the passage is at times too sluggish. Waitress Luz Payson and the Robert Mark Camin also made the trouble mistake of the introduce a romantic subplot into the fray, with Frank's sensitive side being exposed to the Ventia as the exchange in hind dialogues. Clearly, then the aim was to move the series forward by exploring further facts of the Frank characters. While it's possible to appreciate what was the filmmakers' pride to do, it was just not done well enough. Transporter 3 story is heavily glide, but to be executed, I guess. The problem though that the story does not make much churned scenes because of vague villain motives and the clumsy executions. Not to mention, as with the most modern action, all of the stunts fight. Transporter 3 story is heavily light, but that to be explored, I guess. The problem though is that the story does not make much coherent scenes because of Figo villain motivates and the clumsy accusations, not to mention as that most modern Actions all over stunts, fights, and the action scenes are marred by confusing camera placement and the repair fire editing, making certain sequences impossible to enjoy. The fights were choreography by Korean, so they are often impressed, but only if you can figure out what the hell is happening. Why here such a talented like Hyun if all of his choreography will be cut to shreds in the editing room? The film suffers because of its PG-30 rating. The film suffers because of its PG-30 rating too, as it was choppily edited to avoid the need for violent shots of the bullet hits. Transporter 3 is for the most part dumb as well. Villains are stupid and can't shoot, and Frank at one stage balanced this car on two side wheels to go between two trucks. It's therefore baffling that the tone is dumb. Why not cut losses and just reveal in fun ridiculous? To be fair, there is some fun to be had from its to time and the isolate action scenes to shine. A highlight see Frank chasing a car on foot and on bicycle. The problem though is that the story does not make much grand scenes because of vague villains motivates and the clumsy exhibitions, not to mention as with most modern actiners all of the stunts, fight and the scene actions are marred by confusing camera placement and repair fire editing, making certain sequences impossible to enjoy. The fights were choreography by Korean, so they are often impressed, but only if you I can figure out that the hell is happening. Why here such a talented like you can if all of his choreography will be cut to shared in the editing room. The film suffered because of its PG-30 rating too, as it was choppily editing to avoid the need for violent shoots of the bullet hits. Transporter 3 is for the most part dumb as well. Villains are stupid and cannot shoot straight, and Frank at one stage balances his car on two side wheels to go between two trucks. It's therefore baffling that the tone is so dumb. Why not cut losses and just level in fun? Ridiculously to be fair, there is some fun to be had from the time to time, and isolated action scenes to shine. A highlight see Frank chases a car on foot and on a bicycle, returning to the role of Frank Martin. Jason Statham is intentionally the same character that he plays in all of his action movies. However, Statham is so successful not because returning to the role of Frank Martin, Jason Statham is intentionally the same characters here that he plays in all of his action movies. However, Statham is so successful not because of the range but because of his inherent charisma and the screen presence, both qualities of which are the omnipresent in his performance here. Additionally, Statham actually inhabits the role and as a result does not even sound covered or the phony, which is highly laudable. Statham love insert this time around was played by Natalya Rudakova, a hairdresser with the no acting experience who was the required by the loose basin on the foam. Her lack of acting skill is obviously, but she survivable enough for this type of action movie. Interestingly, while Redwork is the admittedly somewhat sexy, she not the typical super hot Megan Fox type that on wet except to see in a movie like this. Meanwhile, Robert Knepper played the villain Johnson. He completely generic action movie villain, though and he legs are the chilling acts of his work on TV pen of TV Passion Break. At the end of the day, Transporter 3 is neither good nor bad, is heavily flawed and the completely forgettable, but is not less survivable, enjoyable to an extent, thanks to a few action beats and even a decent smarting tough in cheek humor. Action films like these are akin to a humor from from McDonald's quick, easy, cheap, and the readily available pet. At the end of the Transporter 3 is the neither good nor bad. It's heavily flawed and the completely forgettable, but it's not less serviceable and enjoyable to an extent thanks to a few nice action beats and even a decent smarting of the tone is check humor. Action films like these are akin to a hamburger from the McDonald's, quick, easy, cheap, and the readily available, but nothing overly silkful, and some are better made than others. Lucy Basin Transporter Action Series, featuring any number of slick black audios and the mercy and Jason Statham breathing heavily through his nose. No chases into his third episode. Once again, Statham plays Frank Martin, the high-school transporter and self-relighting Thor guy living on the Coto de Azorin and taking on the terrifying, dangerous mission in return for a fateful of 500 knots. Statham is a relatedly entertaining action hero. Though he is better in the grand film, the script is patient but the director is the overlord Magden, whose surname is the most exciting things about the film. Saying this message is anyone who know that imagine what it's like writing them, but it also extremely important one of the Guardian's great exits reader funder model. Reader funding means we can cover what we like. We are not beholden to the political victims of a billionaire owner. No one can tell us what not to say or what not to report. Reader funding means we don't have to chase clicks and the traffic. We are not desperately seeking your attention for its own sake. We pressure to the stories that we pursue the stories that our additional team deems important and they believe are worthy of our time, worthy of your time. Reading funding means we can keep Reading funding means we can keep our website open, allowing as many people as possible to read quality journalism from around the world, especially people who live in places where the free press is impaired. The supporter of the readers like you in Pakistan keep all that possible. At the moment, just 2.4% of our regular 2.4% of our regular readers help fund and the work. If you want to protect independent journalism, please consider joining them today. We value whatever you can spare, but spotting on monthly base make the most impact, enable greater investment in our most crucial fearless journalism. As ever, thanks to you, we can offer you some great benefits, included making these messages go away. We made it very quick to set up, so we hope you will consider it. Thank you. Transporter 3 Review. High school driver Frank Martin Statham is forced into action when a terrorist kidnapper stands a bomb to his first and the inside his transporter the kidnapped daughter wrote off. Release date 5 December 2008. Running time 104 minutes. Certificate 15. Original title Transporter 3. There has not been much so far in his short acting career that has third Jason Statham, but with the Transporter 3, we may have found his the Ashley Hills. The law of domestic returns. Nobody will ever pretend that the first two Transporter film work of art, but they were perfectly. There has not been much so far in his short acting career that has third Jason Statham, but with the Transporter 3 we may have found his Ashley Hill, The Law of Diminishing Returns. Nobody will ever pretend that the first two Transporter films were work of art, but they were perfectly pitched slices of the pre-posters fun that went a long way. It's the established Statham as new action hero, as at it is with the gruff one-liners, as we saw with the Jackie Chan SQ high kicking. Transporter 3 Throw is a door drop affair that takes itself far too seriously, with the previous director Lois Letteria movie on to genre prisoners. Writer-producer Also Basin and the Robert Mark Camney have designed to humans Frank Martin. So the first time we see him, he finishing with his body. French cop Terry Cohn, Francisco Bearland, and then becomes something of a wet balance as he falls for the Natalya, Red OK Valentine, who seemingly exists purely to disprove the rumor started by writer that the Martin was to use Valentine oven process the guy and Though Martin retell, inside I'm not the gay, given the enthusiasm with the weeks he kissed in a buzzer reside. Seduction scene that the boards on the male rape roadside seduction scenes that the border on male rape. She might. Martin was to use Valentina on perhaps the gay, and though Martin, crazily inside I am not the gay, given the enthusiasm with Vic, the kisser her in the buzzer roadside seduction scenes that the border on male rape. She might have a point. Mind you, Martin may be kissing her just on shut her up. For really has a major characters been so misjudged. Valentina in explanation shifts character throughout, from the hardy might to made for it, particle to eyelash flirting, domestic in the distance, with only one unflying factor, she remains unlikable throughout, and in between shows someone mad Frank's defense with a stranger series of the monologue about chicken, kiwi and the dessert. In fact, she banks on board food so much that we thought about giving this too. Valentina inexable shift characters throughout, from heavily must to meet, for it party girl to eyelash flirting domestic in the desert. With only one unflying factor, she remains unlikable throughout, and in between she somehow melts Frank Defiance with a strange series of the monologues about chicken cavi and the desserts. In fact, she banks on about food so much that we thought about giving this to McLean start inside. It's up to the action to save the movie. Sadly, through the only things explosive about new director Oliver McTin in his name, the fight scenes are road reruns of the first. It's up to the action to save the movie. Sadly, through the only things exclusive about new director Oliver McTin in his name, the fight scene are road reruns of the first two films, with the nothing too much the sleek up oil scene of the first or the 5-horse beat in the second. As for car chases, the big gimping that the Martin is fair to a bomb that will explode if he stares more than 75 feet from his vehicles, is frustrating underuse with the on big set pieces in which Martin takes after the car on a kid bike, clunky and the involving when it should have been spare and the kinite the film in the microscope then. I remember a time when the filmmaker used only a few wide angles shots for a fight scene. But now it's a few hundred. I remember when action movie knew exactly what they were and did not try to pump in anything other than explosive and the testosterone. I even remember when big fight scene in the movie talks real choreography to pull off those time are dead. After seeing Courant of the Scroll just a few weeks ago, I was ready for an action movie where I could actually tell what was going on. The first Transporter movie has some delightful and beautiful choreography fight scenes. The camera would pan back as Jason Statham tiptoed across an oil slick, wearing bike pedals on his feet, kicking people in the face. Transporter 3 featured the same Jason Statham in the Daisy 1 second burst that they hardly convey much more than a battery lag or first. Unlike Scholar, the camera in the Transporter 3 stay relatively still, but the quick cuts make it the almost impossible to make out anything that's going on. Frank Martin Statham is the transporter. He delivers high valuable good for his clients. His clients are always of the unsavory sort, and the Frank always finds himself in some sort of predicament. This time the finds out transporting something very usual. He also been giving a bracelet that will below him sky high if he also been giving a bracelet that will blow him sky high if he gets too far away for his car seat. I told you he always finds himself in a predicament. The plot takes Frank and a girl named Valentina across Europe. Frank drives his own Audi A8, which apparently can do quite a few things. It even drives well after being at the bottom of a lake. Go figures. The villain is not even worth mention. Science. The reason we go and see the Transporter movie is to see one of the great Western material artists perform. Statham is a master of his craft, and it's delightful to watch him in movies that properly feature his material arts. Sadly, this is not one of those films. We spend more time listening to Valentina Van than we do with the Statham kicking butt. What we do get in action scenes are near independent and the generic in tone. Take for example after Frank fights off an interior gang of men. Time listening to Valentina whine that we do with the Statham kicking butt. What we do get in action scenes are near indescribable and the generic in throughout. Take for example after Frank fights off an interior gang of men, the big guy interiors. Frank argued that the smart tone. Oh big guy, no I am the big one. Har har har, real funny. The big guy has been drawn out even since the Indians John franchise beat into death. Indiana Jones franchise beat it to death. It seems that the Transporter series is yet another victim of the generic action film. It's sad to see another original franchise head down that road. Film review Transporter 3. Jason Statham returns for a third go-round it as a missionary courier. Frank Martin interpreted Lucy Basin in creative series, but this time he fighting Paling. Jason Statham returned for a third go-round as a missionary Korean. Frank Martin in the created Lucy Basin in creative Transporter series, but this time he firing blanks. Easily the roast in the choreography that has been notable manually for the presence of its everyman action star. Transporter 3 is a no serial, cheaply edited before. The awful dialogues penned by Basin and the frequent collaborate Robert Mark. Easily the rust in a choreography has been notable meanwhile for the presence of its everyman action star. Transporter 3 is a non-serial, cheaply edited before. The awful dialogues penned by Basin and the frequent collaborate Robert Mark Cameron, constantly cammering Statham, usually actions speak louder than the word style. The actor loyal internships. The actor loyal international fan base should ensure handsome box office return but close to home. Thanksgiving weekend viewers already trip up on the Triphone could be extra slow on the uptake. While the Transporter series has secretly aspired to being something of a poor man's brawn, identity prepared with a bite of 007 style international indie cried this one. Deposit his admin refused. Statham ex Special Forces Op again finds himself in the transporting business when a nasty government official Robert Knepper has him outfitted with an explosive bracelet that will denote if he will turn beyond 100 feet for his car. From his car. Even worse than that, the length, height, each accuracy in his choreo, the thoroughly. Even worse than that lengthy height, each accuracy in his choreo, the thoroughly interacting kidnapping daughter of the head of the Environmental Protection Agency from the Ukraine, Georgabi. What is it about Jason Statham that continue to make men and women alike into Statham apologize? Regardless of how creepy his film get, I first remember enjoying Statham in his voice-cracking role in Lock, Stock and the Two Smoking Barrels and have since seen him transformed into an unlikely action hero. Statham role choices have not been great. but he always managed to embody and the everyman quality that is relatable for men and the irritable for the women. Additionally, he's the forever Christmas seems to constantly be crying out that as an actor he is better than these role that maybe she choosing them for fun and not because he has to. The Transporter series of film represents Statham at his best but also at his most innocuous in these films. We see Statham as a completely content actor who can convincingly perform action scenes, but who never quite research, respectively due to theatre-based script and the ridiculous set pieces. The first two Transporter films were low-budget, mindless fun, each one grossing a steady profit. In the third one, an enjoyable rooftop, or does it such all the fun out of its basic primer? Transporter 3 has ex Special Forces soldier turned driver Frank Martin. Jason Statham being forced back into his transporting role after a job he tried to pass off to a colleague. This time the cartoonish bad guy in consider with the forcing a deal between an evil multinational corporation and the head of the Ukraine Environment Protection Agency. Martin task is to transport a non-strip package along with a mysterious woman, Valentine. To ensure his mission in the complete, he is strapped with a unremovable metal bracelet that will explode if he gets too far away for his vehicles. Transporter plots have never been the film's strong points, and his one is the expectations. The plot is full of holes and the inconsistencies. Martin, who has established certain immutable rules for his transporter business, managed to break every single once again, just as he done in his previous film. The question for me going into in this film was, does the action deliver? Has established certain immutable rules for his transporter business, managed to break every single once again, just as he done in his previous film. The question for me going into this film was, does the action deliver? The answer kinda, the action here is a lot of fun and they all thought the final set pieces is over just a bit too quickly. There enough good stuff here to keep casual fans entertained. Cartoonish bad guy aptly named Joseon, is considered with a forcing a deal between an evil multinational corporation and the head of the Ukraine Environmental Protection Agency. Martin's task is to transport a non-script package along with a mysterious woman Valentina to ensure his mission is completed. He is trapped with a unremovable metal bracelet that will explode if he gets too far away for his vehicles. Transporter plots have never been the film's strong points, and this one is no expectations. The plot is full of holes and inconsistencies. Martin, who has established certain multiple rules for his transporter business, managed to break every single one again, just as he doing in his previous film. The question for me going into this film was, does the action deliver? The answer for his transporter business managed to break every single one again, just as he done in his previous film. The question for me going in this film was, does the action deliver? The answer kinda, the action here is a lot of fun and although the final set pieces is over just a bit too quickly, there enough good stuff here's to keep casual fans entertained. However, the film never rises to what I would consider transporter style levels of outlandish in the first film. Frank Martin forget a team of bad guys while all wheeled up and using bicycle pedal to keep his balance. In the second film, Frank Martin drove his car off a ramp and had a crane grab a dome of the vehicle's understeer before landing perfectly upright. This film never achieved anything similar to those. Light up and using bicycle pedals to keep his balance. In the second film, Frank Martin drove his car off a ramp and had a crack guard a bomb off the vehicle's underside before landing perfectly upright. Frank Martin drove his car off a ramp and had a crack guard a bomb off the vehicle's underside before landing perfectly upright. This film never achieved anything similar to those moments. Deposit the introduction of a crank speed, like plot device in the exploding bracelet. Aside from a fantastically convinced and the executed bicycle sequence, which you can briefly see in the film trailer, anything here really was. I strong felt that the only way for this movie to seduce was to embrace its over-the-top nature, but unfortunately it chose to go another way. The biggest problem with this film is the completely pointless romantic subplot the previous Transporter film have. The biggest problem with this film is the completely pointless romantic subplot the previous Transporter film have Martin dabbled with the romance before, once with the Asian actress Shuki and a brief iterations in the last film with the Amber Valita. But they will always be pushed to the side in favor of Frank Martin fighting guys and blowing them up. This one spent a painfully long time on the relationship between Martin and the Valentine, seemingly forgetting that the romance is not why people got to see Transporter film. What's more puzzling is that the script was written by series producer Lucy Basin with Robert Mark Camin, who briefly does not seem to understand what makes his series fun. The relationship never ever approach plausibility and every single beat of it is crying worthy due to the copies. Crying worthy due to the copies. Producer Lucy Basin with Robert Mark Camin to briefly does not seem to understand what makes his series fun. The relationship never ever approach plausibility and every single beat of it is crying worthy due to the complex amount of time the film spent on the pronounced moment between these two. The film never quite break out to the achieve the moment presents in the previous film. Deposit their vast difference, it hurts for me to avoid comparing this movie with the Chronicle of this call, since they are both recent action flick. If Grant is not billed as such, it certainly features action prominently both in the movie itself and in its marketing. Let me just say the following: the action in Transporter 3 is more enjoyable and far more compressible than that of the current. Action prominently both in the movie itself and in the marketing. And in its marketing, let me just say the following: the action in Transporter 3 is more enjoyable and far more comfortable than that of the Chronicle. Furthermore, the bad guy in this film, played by Robert Knepper, is much more memorable, even if that not saying much, and delightful and delightfully self-delicious to both. I am pacifist, I am pacifist, he declared in one of the film's final scenes, when earlier in the film, we saw him throw a torrent and shoots his own henchman in the head. Overall, while Current might be a marginally better film, Transporter 3 is more fun and more satisfies is more fun and the more satisfies as an action movie. In the end, useless you are a Transporter fan. There are nothing here to really recommend it the film, save a couple of the unique set pieces. In the end, useless you are Transporter fan. There are nothing here to really recommend this film, save a couple of the unique set pieces. If you are Transporter fan, you should know that the film really is not as enjoyable or as action lead and the previous few installment. But if all you really want is to see Frank Martin go on one more sweet but satisfying adventure, and I know how hard of an impulse that is to Danny, then definitely trap in for Transporter 3. If you are a man, cast member of a long-running network television show in 2025, you should be set for life financially once the syndication deal kick in, prove you invest wisely and don't develop $1,500 a day fragper egg habit. Egg habit. This is the dream for many working actors who, if those so choices, can use the freedom they have earned from a successful series to work on less licorice protective that dissatisfies their article projects that dissatisfy their artist craving. If you are wondering about how this is all worked back in the day, network television gives have always been pretty choice gigs for the most part. So when you watch old episode of the Mary Trail Moore Show, the Andy Griffin Show, and the My Mother the Car, you can be fairly certain the flock in front of the camera are pulling down a very comfortable wax. There are, however, expectations, though it would wind up becoming a syndication smash and a pop culture touchstone Sherwood, Scotch, Zennis Dictum, Gelling Iceland only latest third season on CBS. It was Candle to Spare. The broadcast live of the Gunsmoke. It was hardly a presents piece of the network weekly pomegranate slate, but it is performed well in the rating and was peacefully informative. You the CBS would fairly comparative the show performance. It was hardly a presents piece of the network weekly pomegranate slate, but it performed well in the rating and was peacefully inoffensive. You did think CBS would fairly compensate. Inoffensive. You did think CBS would fairly compensate the show performance. According to Tain Lucy, would the chief television immortally ask the kind-hearted movie star Ginger the network did anything but. In a recent interview with the Forbes, the 91-year-old Lucy revealed that she earned 1,500 per episode over her 3 seasons on the Giggling Island. To be clear, this is an provide in 2025. This would amount to $50 to $194 per episode, which for the 36 episode first season, simply put the man, woman and child who directed this trophy will go down as the man who single-handedly destroyed a great film franchise. Somebody by the name Oliver McDone, yes, you ready that right, has then gal to call themselves a director with his mask. Thankfully, I think McDone is a pay down after witness this the trashy, incompatible effort in the Transporter series. Nobody would seriously allow themselves to have their real name planted all over it. Directed Oliver McDone, cast Jason Statham, Natalya Rudakova, Francisco Bearland, Robert Knepper, Jorian Carver, Alex Cobold, David Artrick, Jon Sundberg. Years of release 2008, length 19 minutes. Synopsis. Frank Martin is forced to drive a mysterious woman through Europe after a colleague fails to deliver on a driving contract. As they do say, Frank uncovers a plan to blackmail a high-ranking minister and set about doing the right thing. Lame action flixies, Statham written as the Frank. Lame action flixies, Statham written as the Frank. In this obtuse factory story, white like and the generic stock characters all vie for the same amount of the attention. Simply put, the man, woman or child who directed this tricky will go down as the man who single-handedly destroyed a great film franchise. Somebody by the name Oliver McDone, yes, you read that right, has the gall to call themselves a director with his much. Thankfully, I think Megan is a piece down. After witness this trusty, incompatible effort in the Transporter series, nobody would seriously allow themselves to have their real name plastered all over it. Okay, so perhaps I am being a little harsh on the poor guy, but anybody who set themselves up of name can accept to the ridiculous if the film you are directing is the absolutely garbage. And let me tell you, final flock, Transporter 3 is utter garbage. Therefore, by the rules of the engagement in cinematic cricketing, Copa faithful from me today. Frank was not happy about being called a Nancy boy. Where's to being? Well, let's start with the basic plot. Frank Marshall Jason Statham is forced to drive his car again after being seconded by bad guy Jason, a stylish Robert Knepper, to drive a young woman to a mysterious and the heritile unknown direction. The woman, Valentina, is intentionally reclined to the reveal too much about herself, but as the film wears on, and let me to tell you, it is fairing. We gradually discover that she is the daughter of a minister who is about to sign a valuable agreement to a major company for the disposal of his country waste. She is being kidnapped forced to become a brightening chip as a Jason pressure she been kidnapped forced to become a brightening chip as Johnson pressured the minister to sign the contract to him. The plot, such as it is fairly typical of most action film likes, with the horrible father trying desperately to save his daughter from his almost certain death, while the resilient and the unholy hero bravels and drive his way through most of the European while driving a car that is seemingly impressed to almost all manners of the driving conditions, like bullets, explosive truck and other car on the road. Along the way, the hero falls for the mysterious, sexually protections girl sitting in the car next to him, no matter how unattractive she is in European trash kind of way, and ends up having to save her from a previously situation involving a speed train. Films like these generally do not work too much about things like script development or the criticism, and the Transporter 3 hold true to the value system. Dialogues fall from the mouths of our characters like pieces of food from a pulling mile. There is very little here that is not generic, like knockoff of other film, most of which indicates the very nature of this film series. But where Transporter 2 success with the scenes of the sublines and the ridiculous and not taking itself seriously. Transporter 3 seems is not on the being quite the opposite. MacDon directed the film like he just got himself a new handycam and is intent on the finding with almost all the setting. Color changes obscure out of the focus and the strange, unsettling visual flash and the image discovering are used in the place of the actual. Lactimine storytelling, making sure TS3 remains one of the last of the dynamic shallow entertained into the directed the film like he just got himself a new hand cam, and is the intent of the finding with the almost all the setting, color changing of course, out of the focus and the strange, unsettling visual flashes and the image decoration are used in the place of actual. Lactimine storytelling, making sure TS3 remains one of the least dynamic shallow entertained into the franchise. There very little in the way of characters development past what we have already seen in this film. All the characters seems to be merely going through the points in action film paint by numbers, and it's anyone. Make seems to direct action in such a way as to make it very unaction, while Statham delivered the same bag of the trick in this film that he did not in both previous interiors, and to some extent what he delivered in most of his action film. And by the end, after his unpanthy start at the bad guy before him punching on the sequence, you being to try it of the same old. If only the film offered something new inside of a hacking, tried retired of what come before. The action feels very forced, very flat and almost anemic, which is surprising given just how much action the film actually does content. There is an awkward scenes of the hello. Roti learned Genesism here. Transporter 3 is one of the more lackluster action film of the recent years. Statham gives it his all, don't get me wrong. He is still as the sold up performer as ever, delivering a masculine action star style with his great screen presence. Sure he's no all-wheeler, Sure, he is no Oviller, but he delivers what's required for a film like this, and the delivery in a speed. Co-star Natalya, Red OK is barely comparable a Valentina, her thick accent and the wooden performance hamstring Statham on. Redva OK certainly not the vampire's vision we have expected, and she looking steadily similar to the previous film, muscular wearing femme fatale, which does not help either. Wearing female fatale, her performance of all those in the film is the weakest. The film does not, however, have one shining light in the acting department, and that is the presence of Robert Knepper, forcibly while Valence in the perfect counter punch to the Statham right cross. He is a nasty piece of work, and the kidnapper plays it to the heat. His facial types and the manners indicated a climb, yet frustrated evil dude. Kidnapper cannot come over the film Fatal on his own, however, and there are some series lapses in the logic and the plausibility running throughout the Knepper cannot over the film plot on his own, however, and there are some series lapses in the logic and the plausibility running in throughout the movie, none the last of which is the Statham's ability to inflate and float his car from the depth of the lake, using only the air from his tires and part of some kind of the bag. If releasing air from your tires into a bag, which is of the unlimited all-right capacity, causes a fairly heavy car to float to the surface, would not it stand to reason that the vehicles would float with the same air in it tries anyway, and I used to fit car tries for a living, so I know that there not enough air inside car tries to do anything remotely like cause a life raft to inflate to the point of the us ability. Light logical flaws like these simply make the film go from fantastically ludicrous to the summily moricone. There are moments toward the end which early reminiscence the recent Angelina Jolie flick Vental cause a life raft to inflate to the point of us ability. Light logical flaws like these simply make the film go from fantastically ludicrous to the subliminally morcon. Their movement towards the end, which is early reminds of the recent Angelina Jolie vlog, where Statham bought a train using only a car. Strike one for the unmagnetic storytelling. To be honest, I was decidedly unimpressed with Transporter 3, and I am disappointed to admit that perhaps after the stupidly insane brilliance of the first sequel, I was accepting something a little well adventure what we are presents. To be honest, I was decidedly unimpressed with the Transporter 3, and I am disappointed to admit that perhaps after the stupid insane brilliance of the first sequel, I was accepting something a little well more adventure what we are presents. Barely comedic and the overly stunt directing of a franchise that at this stage looked like it might be a steer. Unfortunately, it looked like Frank is going to have to trade his OD in for a more realizing pursuit of time, while the action and effects are above average. The starting and the frenetic editing in Shora frightly handage include right through European with the Frank, a Solon and the unsexual Valentina, and some of the most obvious trashy thugger committed to the film this year. Overall, you did be well survive to merely rent this film on DVD as a weekly hire rather than paying good money for the cinema tickets. A Lucas Statham, a Lucas Statham vehicles is in the dire need of an injection of the Statham that the stately you did things would be delivered inspired by the director with the name McDonald. I remember a time when filmmakers used only a few white angel shots for fight scenes, but now it's a few hundred. I remember when action movie knew exactly what they were and did not try to pump in anything other than explosive and the test tone. I ever I even remember when big fight scenes in the movie took real choreography to pull off. Those times are dead. After seeing Current of Skull just a few weeks ago, I was ready for an action movie where I could actually tell what was going on. The first Transporter movie has some delightful and beautiful choreography fight scenes. The camera would pan back as Jason Statham tiptoed across and the oil slick, wearing bike pendants on the feet, kicking people in the face. Transporter 3 features the same Jason Statham in Daisy 1 second bursts that they hardly convey much more than a Burnley leg or the first. Unlike Skull, the camera in Transporter 3 stayed relative still, but the quick cuts make it almost impossible to make out anything that's going on. Frank Martin Statham is the transporter. He delivers highly valuable goods for good for his clients. His clients are the always of the unsurvey sort of. Frank always finds himself in some sort of the predictable. This time he finds when he transporting some things. Very usual. He also been giving a bracelet that will below him sky high if gets too far away from his car. See, I told you. See, I told you. He always finds himself in a predictable. The plot takes Frank and a girl named Valentina across Europe. Frank drives his own Audi A8, which apparently can do quite a few things. It even drives well after being at the bottom of a lake. Go figures. The villain is not enough worth mention. Since the reason we go and see the Transporter movie is to see one of the great wisdom material artist performance. Statham is a mysterious of a craft and it's a delight to watch him in movie that they properly feature these material arts. Sadly, this is not one of these films. We spend more times listening to Valentina whine than we do with the Statham kicking butt. What we do get in the action scenes are near indivisible and the generic in thought. Take for the example after Frank fight of an entertained gang of men the big guy enters. Time listening to Valentina while then Widow with the Statham kicking out. What we do get in action scenes are near indivisible and the generic in throughout. Take for example after Frank fights off an entertained gang of men the big guy enters. Frank, are you the smart one? One big guy, no, I am the big one. Ho, real funny, the big guy has been warned out even since the Indians beat it to death. It seems that the Transporter series is yet another victim of the generic action flick. It's sad to see another original franchise head down that the road. Jason Statham returned from a third go round it as the recently carrying Frank Martin in the Greater Loose Basin Lucrative Transporter series, but this time he fighting blank. Transporter series, but this time he fighting black. Easily the roast in a tragedy that has been notable mainly for the presence of its everyman action star. Transporter 3 is a nonsensical choppily edited bore with the awful dialogues penned by Basin and the frequent collaborate Robert Mark. Easily the roast in a tragedy that has been notable mainly for the presence of its everyman action star. Transporter 3 is a nonsensical choppy edit before the awful dialogues. Constantly crapping Statham's usual actions speak louder than the word style. The actor loyal international fan base should ensure handsome box office return but close to home. Thanksgiving weekend viewers already tribe up on the Triphone could be extra slow on the uptake. While the Transporter series has the secretly aspired to being something of a poor man's brown identity prepared with a bite of 7 style international integrate this one deposit his admit refunds Statham has special forces up again find himself in the transporting business when a natty government official Robert Knepper has him outfitted with an explosive bracelet that will denote it if went it beyond 100 feet from his car. Even worse than that, the length, height, each accuracy in his choreography, the although. Even worse than that, the lengthy high teach accuracy in high cargo, the thoroughly irritating kidnapping daughter of the head of the Environmental Protection Agency from the Ukraine. Their track from Marseille to Obsess via struggle and the bent pace, all play by the Ukraine is the fraud with the peril, mainly from the painful banter that make the stuff between Grammy present sound downright poetic by the campaign. If you did not know, Statham would handily get the job done from his previous action movie trends. You certainly would be able to tell her. With incoming director Oliver Macton, his professional last name takes its cue from his birth date, the August 6th dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Favoring rapid cut sequence that the often obscures the actor fancies stunt work. It's still perfectible to those down-out exchange while trapped in that OD with the forced love interest Rudakova, whose mysterious effect on the Statham require him to display his bare torso. It's still perfectible to those drawn-out exchange while trapped in that OD with the forced love interest Rudakova, whose mysterious effect on the Statham require him to display his bare torso enough time to give Marth MC Couch a run from his the shirtless money. Transporter 3 is an action movie from French producer Lucy Besson, himself once an accomplished filmmaker with the Tales like the Leon, The Professional and The Fifth Element under his the belt. Now he writes massive screenplays for low pass director with all the speed and the receptions of a motion pictures assemble line, along with the writing partner Robert Mark Kamen. The duo separates themselves, then cracking out their or four film per years, none of them much good. The trouble is they are made with the reasonable low budgets. Recouples on a combination of the Modrex box office and the DVD slash, sending the elevation that they are successful only in the financial repact. Jason Statham is based on post boy. B-movie action hero extraordinary complete with a busy head, a surplus of the material arts ability and the custy lime peach before rating to direct to video cure and the Sekify channel originals, at which point, like the last side of the Jenny Clued, Van Damme's career, he will disappear for years and then suddenly pop up again. Statham will outstay his the welcome. He's just about there now. See that race or in the name of the king. A Diogen single tally. In his latest mindless actor, Statham returned as the Frank Martin, who has now retired from the baddest driver for hire business to fish with his French detective friend and the comic relief Tarconi. Suddenly Frank is the dupe in one job for by ruthless. Suddenly Frank is duped into one more job by a ruthless chemical mastermind named Quiet. In his latest mindless actor, Statham returned as the Frank Martin, who has now retired from the baddest drive for hire business to fish with his French detective friends and the comic relief Tarconi. Suddenly Frank is duped into one more job by a ruthless chemical mastermind named Quiet. Unperceivably, I might add Johnson Arrow trash thugs by his side. Johnson blackmails environmental lobby yet Leon. Frank Martin is back and this time he has to transport a mysterious Ukraine girl named Valentina from Marseille to Budapest as an added essence. Martin has an explosive bracelet look from Marseille to Budapest. As an added incense, Martin has an explosive bracelet look to his first, which will explode if he moves more than 75 feet from his signatures, which will explode if he moves more than 75 feet from his signature OT. I really liked the first Transporter film. It was a rock-solid B-movie that showed Jason Statham and the cops to make it as a lengthy man and I was as happy as anyone when the film ended up raking in the dough on DVD, getting a bigger than better sequel. Else that was not meant to be the as sequel while bigger was hardly better is changed Statham Frank Martin from a hard-edged anti-hero into a generic superhero capable of the defeating armies of the villains without breaking a sweat or driving the laws of the gravity with his seemingly magical oddity. Thankfully, producer Lucy Basin, perhaps since that we went a little overboard in the last installment, has brought the transporter back down to Earth, and this feels a lot more like the first film than it. Just the second, while some scenes are. I really liked the first Transporter film. It was a rock solid B movie that the short Jason Statham had the chops to make it as a leading man, and I was happy as anyone when the film ended up breaking in the dough on the DVD, creating a bigger and the better sequel else that was not meaning to be as the sequel. While Biggie's was hardly better, it changed Statham Frank Martin from a hard-edged anti-hero Etonia, a generic superhero capable of the defeating armies of the villains without breaking a sweat or defying the laws of the gravity with his seemingly magical oddity. Thankfully, producer Lucy Basin, perhaps sincerely, that he went a little overboard in the last installment has brought the transporter back down to teach and this feels a lot more like the first film than it does the second. While some scenes are sliced a little hard to swallow, he is still capable of making his ode to anything, including driving onto the top of a speeding train. I appreciate the fact that they are relatives trying to make a somewhat exciting film. There's still a lot wrong with this. Thankfully, producer Lucy Basin, perhaps seeing that went a little overboard in the last installment, has brought the transporter back down to each and feels a lot more like the first film than it does not the second. While some scenes are still a little hard to swallow, he is still capable of making his ode to anything, including driving on the top of a speeding train. I appreciate the fact that they are really trying to make a somewhat grifting film. There's still a lot wrong with this movie, which is very disappointing as after a relatively disappointed Bond interview with the Quant of the Souls, it would be nice to see a great action flick in theater this holiday season. Sadly, Transporter 3 is far from being a great action film and is rather a fairly mediocre one. I think the big flaw here lies with the choice of the Oliver McTain as the director. While he certainly has a bad name, with a name like that, I bet no one took it on him in high school. He nowhere near as good an action director as the Louis Leterrier, who helmed the first two films in the series but has since moved on to Greek partners. Latterly, as he recently helmed the McDonald makes all the same mistake Xavier James made in The Headman last year. The editing is way too frenetic and the action scenes are cut too tight that is nearly impossible to well that's going on, which is a really shame as Statham is a terrifying material artist but is not able to show off the extra of his abilities with the style of the ending. Another huge problem with the film is the pacing, which at times is almost lurid. It takes about a half hour before the first real fight scenes, which is and the entertain in action movie times. In a film like this, plot is not especially important, but so much time is spent establishing the known excellent chemistry between Statham and his freckle leading lady. Rudakova, who Basin reportedly discovered walking down the street one day, and on the spot decided to put her in his next film. Likely deposit the heroine's editing. Some of the action scenes are pretty cool, especially an awesome bicycle chases, which is likely park over scenes, but with a bike instead of the legs. Is as cool as ever the Twitter transporter and due to it cut, but after his great performance in the bank job, it's obviously that he's the capable it's obvious that he's the capable of much more than he does here. While While all in all, I still enjoyable the film on B movie. I still enjoyed the film on a B movie level. It's nowhere near as good as it could have been. Basin should do what he can to do get Literal back on board. His great performance in the bank job. It's obviously that the capable of much more than he does here. While all in all, I still enjoyable the film on a B movie level. It's nowhere near as good as it could have been if the franchise continue. Basin should do what he can to get Literal back on the board. If you are looking for a solid action film, but still sold Courant of the Souls, this is the secretly a DVD rental. On an evening that started with me meeting up with the friends for drinking. It's reassuring to know that on an evening that started with me meeting up with a friend for drinks that then happened to involve and the attempts to explain the apple of 80s action movie which are accidentally ran full of homoerotic and went on to detail the bonding experience that can take place between two straight men who witness the rating burning side of America Ninja Steve. On a evening that started with me meeting up with a friend for drinks, that one happened to involve an attempt to explain the appeal of 80s action movie, which are accidentally ran full of homoerotic and went on a detail the bonding experience that they can take place between two sides. Man who witnessed the rating burning side of American Ninja Stephen Champs, Lex Akimbo laying on a beach in high-tech red shorts while sleeping a half. Between two state men who witnessed the rating burning side of American Ninja Stephen Champs, Lex Akimbo laying on a beach in his tight red shorts while slapping a half-necked Sweetie Michael's Rudakova on the back that the evening end with the Transporter 3. Furthermore, as the evening processed, I spoke to another rights and explaining the view that the most action movie director see a secretly clad, oiled up man as the painful of the mechanism without any awareness of how thingly actually looked, and that I watched Transporter 3. Transporter 3 demonstrated all of the points I did been discussing beforehand. It even had the mightily Statham characters. Frank wake up in just his shorts after a stunt of being unconscious, looking as though the bad guys with a fine sheen of the grace, or at the very last turned up the temperature in the room. Man sweet level. The great thing about T30 though is that is the embarrass all its lies with open arms of the fantastic scene of the humor and the evil. Transporter 3 demonstrated all of the points I had been discussing beforehand. It even had the might Statham characters. Frank wake up in just his shorts after a sight of being unconscious, looking as though the bad guys responsible had covered with him a fine sheen of the grace, or at the very last turned up temperature in the room, a man sweet leaves. The great things about T3 though is the embrace all its lies with open arms of fantastic scenes of humor and they even makes reference to award sexually of all the shirtless fighting as Frank Ukraine female passenger grass alongside and his fighting process while later assuming of being the guy when he buffers his roper to her equation is to say, I am not the guy, and has she ever considered that she just was not in the mood? Proof indeed, the fruit hat would explore if ever came close to this film. The humor in T3 is arguable even more of an asset to hit than the action sequence. From the opening dialogues between Frank and the returning characters, Terry Coney, played by the frantic Francisco Berland, this feels fair and more self-aware, making the film as a whole immensely entertaining.